there, Ben. Thanks for stopping by again. This is your video lesson for today. Let's see here, one large topic I want to talk about, and we'll continue this conversation for as long as we need to. Cool, I got your message, I got your text. Looks like your playing has been doing really well, or you've been getting a lot of playing in since last we spoke, and you wanted me to go over a little bit of theory and rhythm. I'll have time today to go over rhythm because it's such a large topic. And then what we'll do next time, if you're still feeling the theory thing, we'll talk about the Nashville number system and how we can take, just to give you a little preview of what that means, is that we're going to take the things that we've learned so far in the keys that we've learned, and we're going to learn how to move them to different keys. That way, when you see a lot of these formulas that you see, the chord progressions, are very common, right? Some of these patterns are used over and over and over again, and if you learn what to do in each position, it's just simply a matter of moving the shapes to different spots on the neck, and therefore you can be way more versatile. That way, if someone says, "Hey, we're going to play in the key of A," you know what to do right away. Or, "Hey, we're going to play in the key of D. Let's do it in D this time." You can take everything you learn and move it to that key. So that's what Nashville numbers allows you to do. But we're going to talk about that next time. This week, what we'll talk about is rhythm. And what I was doing there in the beginning is what I call vibing guitar. It's where I can switch up the strum pattern, and as long as I'm keeping that steady backbeat in the background of the music, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. As long as I'm accenting the same beat every single time, everything else I'm going to do is going to work. Now, the trick is, how do you make sure that your patterns are all going to gel together? How do you switch between them and keep it straight? And the way I like to do it is by using a system that was used in classical Indian music to come up with these patterns. It's all done by speech. What I was doing there in the beginning was I can't write these chords down for you. I call these a la Gregor Alan Isakov chords, where I have a C chord, and I put a G in the bass right there. We'll talk more about slash chords later on. But I put that G in there, that's a real drony kind of note, and then he often does that stuff there. But what I was doing with the strum, though, is what we're talking about today, is more interesting, our conversation today, is that the way they used to do it in Indian music was that it was all spoken. To do complex rhythms, they would use all kinds of spoken syllables. There's another system called Takadimi. That one's a bit more complex. I find for my adult students who are doing this for their own personal edification, rather than learning ancient Sanskrit and learning that way, we're just going to use plain old English. And this is really silly, but it works, man. It works. I remember I was in community college jazz band before I went to my 4-year school, and there was a rhythm there was a rhythm that I couldn't get. I couldn't by looking on paper, like the standard notation, like this stuff right here, right? I was looking at, for whatever reason I couldn't wrap my head around it, and my professor comes up and he goes, "Bicycle bow tie," and I was like, "Huh, what?" And he was like, "Yeah, bicycle bow tie," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Master," I was like, "Master, explain, please." And he was like, "Bicycle bow tie, bicycle bow tie." He's like, "That's how I do complex rhythms." And it dawned on me, like, oh, it doesn't need to be hoity-toity, black dots on the page with all kinds of complex rhythms. We can use spoken English to figure out complex rhythms. And the handout I have for this, like I said, this is silly, but go with me with it, right? Let's see, where are you? Is this right here? It's called my rhythm guide. And it's super silly, but it works, man. Had really good success with this, with people trying to get out of ruts of playing the same rhythms over and over again. That intro that I played, it sounded nice. I think it at least sounded nice. In my head, this is what was going on. Coconut shrimp. What was I doing? Coconut shrimp. Rice Krispie coconut shrimp. Coconut shrimp. Coconut shrimp, Rice Krispie coconut shrimp. I did this to like my tweens and high schoolers, and they're like, "What is that stupid thing you're doing? What are you saying?" It doesn't matter what I'm saying, but the more important thing is capturing the rhythm. And then this pattern here, I was doing 2 16th notes, followed by an 8th note, followed by a quarter note, and then an inverse of that pattern, which is quasi inverse, is 8th note followed by 2 16th notes, followed by a quarter note. Right? So I did these 2 rhythms, coconut shrimp, Rice Krispie treat, right? I was just flipping between those 2, and then I made my pattern way more interesting, rather than just trying to fake. I had student one time come and wanted to do some Neil Young with me, and in his head he was hearing like a pattern, but that pattern did not make any rhythmic sense, but in his head it did, because he wasn't hearing where the backbeat was, and he wasn't staying with a steady set of patterns, right? So in vibing guitar, we can pick two different patterns that are complex on here, and do a simple spoken word: coconut, shrimp, Rice Krispie, coconut, shrimp, coconut shrimp, and it sounds really neat. Oops, that does not sound neat, but. And if you play that in a room full of people, or play it for your better half, they're not going to be none the wiser as what's going in your head. I remember there was a video of the guitar by Tim Henson, excellent shred guitarist, and they asked him, like, what do you think about when you're on stage? And he's like, oh, in my head I'm rapping, right? I'm just making up nonsensical stuff, or like, oh, I'm so cool, like, look at me play guitar. And in his head, the rhythm is going in his head. He's thinking about it. He's literally saying rhythms in his head. And I've talked to many guitar teachers or pedagogues, and they all say the same thing, like, come up with a rhythm that you can keep consistent in your head. So rather than some complex, like 1E and a 2E and a 3E and stuff like that, right? You can do that too, but I find this is better for vibing guitar, because you're keeping like a consistent saying in your head, and that your audience is gonna be able to hang on to. So what you can do is you take one. First, I start with one pattern. Like say, and you got to say it the way you're going to order it at a restaurant, right? You don't want to go coconut shrimp, right? Timothy, you had a stroke, right? You got to say it how you're saying in English. So coconut shrimp. You say it with a little bit of rhythm too. Coconut shrimp. So you're not going to go at the restaurant like you're not going to go to like the Thai restaurant and go, I would like want coconut shrimp, right? It's not that. It's coconut shrimp. And you just simply see how long you keep that going for. And I'm doing little hammer-ons, more about that later on. And you just get it so you can do it on autopilot. And then that way you're playing a cool, complex rhythm in a very simple, stupid sort of way, right? It's kind of like when I was in my one of my pedagogy classes in grad school, and I could not remember. We had to basically describe like how someone's moving with like scientific terms, and I could not remember supinate. And my classmate comes up to me and says, "Would you like a bowl of soup?" And I was like, "Oh, supinate is when we do this kind of motion." Right? So I was like, oh, I'll remember forever now. And so silly things are great ways to learn complex concepts, or complex rhythms in this case right here. So that's what I would practice as far as like your acoustic guitar strumming playing, is pick one pattern, get it really in your fingers so that you can do an autopilot, and then pick a second pattern that's a little different, and then you stick the two together. So you can simply, not simply, none of this stuff is simple, but you can do, say if I did, there I did chocolate strawberry for a second, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna mix that up a little bit. I'm gonna do cinnamon oatmeal, and then I practiced both those separately, and then I stuck them together, right? That's a good way of getting out of like the same strum patterns you're doing all the time. It's very easy for us to play the same rhythms over and over again, but with this guide right here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 3 rows is a lot of different rhythms. I'm not good at math, so I'll let you do the math on that one. So do that there, and then once you get those done, then we go, okay, let's go into like the more heavy 16th note strums, like. But you got to do this one first right here. Get these down first, and then we'll do way more complex patterns in a not so esoteric way in terms of notation systems. Remember that the notation system that's on this page right here, this is a Western construction, right? This is just a way for people to transmit information from one to another when they're not in the same room together, right? Music, there's plenty of cultures where they don't use any sort of system like that. It's all by ear, by rote, or not by rote and by ear. They would play a rhythm and they would do syllabic back and forth, and that's how they would get the rhythms. And they can be quite complex, actually extremely complex, can be done that way through spoken word or language. So remember that this is just some white dudes in Europe in the Middle Ages started coming up with ideas like this, and then for some reason people think if it's not this, it's not artistically valid, and that cannot be further from the truth. That's just one way of writing stuff down. This is a way that people who don't want to quit their job and learn how to spend all their time working on rhythms like I had to do in my school training. This is a great way to get going with that without having to take a sabbatical at work and take a month off and learn how to read rhythms really well. Easier to do it this way, far easier. Cool. So there's that part right there, and then the second is I got to introduce you to my best friend. He doesn't ever lie to me. He tells me the truth. He tells me when I'm not playing things right. He's there for me in the morning when I'm working on stuff that's really complex. And it is the metronome, right? Best friend. This thing's great to work with. This, I'm going to set mine here to 80 BPM, right? Set to the quarter note. And I was going to have this. And then what you would do is practice first. Can you say it, right? I'll do an easy one. I'll do the hot fudge sundae. Hot fudge sundae. Hot fudge sundae. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Hot fudge sundae. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play hot dog first, right? So like I said, it's super silly, but this stuff works. So we go hot dog, hot fudge sundae, hot fudge sundae. Why am I starting there? Right, is because I got to practice what's called subdividing the beat, right? So we start with a simple quarter note, and then you're just going to go right down the rhythm pyramid, right? We're going to go, I can send that to you if you need the rhythm pyramid handout. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hot dog, hot fudge sundae, hot fudge sundae, coconut shrimp, coconut shrimp, coconut shrimp. And you got to do it with the metronome. Now, playing the metronome is kind of awkward at first, but I think you've obviously had some musical training, so you might have already worked with the metronome. If you haven't, allow yourself to start with the quarter note and can you just play a quarter note with that click, right? 3, and then switch to eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So we got our quarter note, hot dog, eighth notes. We need a hot fudge sundae on that handout right there. Once you get that down, and you can do that consistently, back and forth without dropping the beat. A lot of times I hear this. And it takes a person a second to get on. It has to be stone cold right into the next rhythm with no dropping the beat. Now, how are you going to know if you drop the beat is what I would recommend doing is actually record yourself like on your phone or something, actually doing this and listen to the playback. That's what I did a lot, was like I would actually play. A lot of my Instagram stuff is just born out of me like just going back and spot checking stuff. Like, oh, that actually turned out pretty good, I'll post it. Right? A lot of times the videos that people did not see are the ones where I'm like, oh, I got to work on that skill myself. So I would record yourself doing it, listen to the playback, make sure it's precise. Once you get quarter notes and eighth notes precise, then you go on to the more complex rhythms. Once you can do all these consistently, then we go into the weird 16th note funk strum pattern stuff that Dave Matthews, Gregory Allen does, all those sorts of things. But like I said, this is a great place to start right here. It gets you playing cool rhythms right away, and none will be the wiser. If you play these rhythms and don't tell anybody, you wouldn't have known in the beginning of the video, you just thought that it was a cool riff, right? So same thing here too. And you can also use these for your soloing riffs as well. More on that later. Actually, I'll talk about it real quick. Is that, say for example, I have coconut shrimp, right? Right, that might be like my rhythmic theme for my lead part, or for my solo, right? If I do. I did coconut shrimp, coconut shrimp, coconut shrimp, and then break the sequence with a string bend. So I did 4 note sequences, and then broke the sequence chain with a guitar effect, like a string bend. But we can talk more about that later on. So as far as soloing, you learn other people's licks out of their solos, and you integrate it into your own playing, and then you make your own by using the rhythm guide and sequential patterns with guitar effects. But more of that later on. So do that for me with this week. Pick a couple rhythms and see if you can start mixing up your strum patterns. What we'll talk about next time is the Nashville number system, if there's no questions about this, and I'll see you the same time next time.